Was the feature event at Randwick this afternoon. Punters made Soho Square hot favourite at 10-9 on as he went for his third win in a row.
Over the rise, 400 metres to go, and in front it's still Prince of Praise. On the outside, March Hare cruises up now to start to give you the challenge. Here comes Soho Square, and Deposition starting to come home quickly, and Slight Chance looking for a way up on the fence. March Hare's dash to the lead with 150 to go. Deposition's the danger. Deposition out after March Hare. March Hare in front. Here comes Deposition. Deposition drumming at March Hare. March Hare.
Yes, March Hare getting the money at 4-1. That's the day in sport. Angela.
Thanks, Mark. And now here's Alan Humphreys with the weather.
Thanks, Angela. Mild and sunny conditions expected to continue for the next 2 or 3 days. The only sign of any rain, just a few very light showers on the coastal fringe, no more than about 10 kilometres inland.
Thanks, Angela. A crowd of 97,000 people saw Essendon defeat Carlton in today's AFL Grand Final at the MCG. In a surprisingly one-sided match, Essendon took a 30-point lead after the first quarter and Carlton never recovered. Many of the fans made an early start with a steady stream converging on the MCG by water, road, foot and tram. And a nervous morning for others as well. Goal umpire Doug Goulet officiating his first grand final.
Now, I don't think there'll be too much in the way of embellishments, but I've certainly got plans to hold off the signals for that extra half a second.
As the players warmed up, the entertainment hotted up with a massive tribute to umpiring and a half-time celebration of Australia's Indigenous people. Outside, the long wait continued, but for Essendon fans, it was worth it.
The teams broke the grand final banners as the closest pairing on paper for years, but perhaps it was premiership nerves that separated them. The Blues capitulated on the centre and half-back lines, and Long received an honour guard to the goal mouth.
50 metres out. Still going. 30 metres out. Oh, what play!
Silvani thought he had a finger to it, and Carlton got their handy first almost immediately. But Essendon smothered the Blues playmakers and headed into the first break an imposing 30 points clear. Wallace made a shattering entry to the forward line in the second term. With Hannah down, Long scored his second, then Wallace picked up his own. If the tide was to turn, Kernahan would have to make waves, and he did.
It's going to go through.
But despite his 4 goals, the Bombers extended their half-time 6-goal advantage with panache.
Brilliant football, Danaher.
Their confidence and speed pressured the Blues on the ball. 3 straight majors, including Kernahan's 7th, gave the Blues a thrill, but the reply was swift.
Kelthorpe's shot for goal. It's on the line, it's through.
It was left to dominant players like O'Donnell and Hurd to reap the rewards.
Brilliant kick to the goal front. Spalding couldn't take the mark. Another goal to Essendon kicked by Hurd.
Consolation prizes were given just minutes before the end, but poetry won the day when eventual Norm Smith medalist Michael Long passed to let the Brownlow medalist score his first goal. Essendon night and day champions with their 15th premiership, equalling Carlton's flag tally.
Yes, Essendon deserving winners, the final margin 44 points. The Brisbane Broncos arrived in Sydney this evening, ready to defend their Rugby League premiership against St George tomorrow. But while the Broncos had it all their own way last year, circumstances this time round are very different. The Broncos' arrival on the eve of the grand final is exactly the routine they followed last year, leaving the flight to Sydney to the last moment. Completing their final training session in Brisbane this morning, open to the public and the media. Coach Wayne Bennett keen to maintain the team's routine. The difference this time, Brisbane would create history by becoming the first team to win the premiership from 5th position.
Well, I'm confident, I'm not overconfident, because I think, I know we've got a hard game in our hands tomorrow, but I'm just very pleased with the way the week's gone, and I know that we're ready to play, and it's just a matter of waiting now till 3 o'clock tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll do very well.
In contrast, St George made their last public appearance at Wednesday's grand final breakfast and have been in camp since then. The players fresh after a fortnight's rest, their preparation bearing little resemblance to the hurdy-gurdy of successive sudden death finals last year, which ended in the disappointment of a thorough defeat by the ruthless Broncos.
You know, I know it's in my mind the pain and the hurt that was there after last year's grand final, and I know the other players are feeling that as well. The players are feeling that as well. So, you know, we don't bring it out verbally, but it's definitely there, mate.
While rugby league is the focal point tomorrow, there'll be the usual pre-game and half-time razzmatazz, this year headed by Tina Turner, the international superstar arriving today to prepare for her performance. Australia is on target to clinch the Davis Cup semi-final against India in Chandigarh. Wimbledon champs Todd Woodbridge and Mark Woodford have taken the first set and should be able to give Australia an unbeatable 3-rubbers-to-love lead. It will be America versus New Zealand in the final of tomorrow's World Match Race Sailing Championship in Perth. Ed Baird of the United States and Russell Coutts of New Zealand both had 3 straight wins in their semi-finals. Racing started today in light easterly winds, and defending world champion Russell Coutts trailed at the first windward mark behind fellow Kiwi Rod Davis. But on the Spinnaker run, Coutts came through on the inside to gain a winning advantage. Coutts also won the second race, and the pressure was on Davis in the third. Approaching the finish, Davis led, but Coutts rolled over the top to snatch a thrilling 1-second victory. American Ed Baird came from behind to win the first 2 races against Eddie Warden-Owen. Disaster struck the Englishman in the third and deciding race when he hit the starting buoy to incur a penalty turn, and the race was as good as over. Tomorrow's final between Baird and Coutts is the best of 5. The Canberra Cannons have missed the NBL playoffs, suffering a surprise loss to Hobart last night. While the Cannons can start planning for next year, the Illawarra Hawks confirmed their place in the finals with a 3-point win over Adelaide.
The 36ers went into the game without injured star import Mark Davis, but were desperate to wrap up a playoff spot with a victory. While the Hawks had less to play for, they were already sitting pretty in the top 8.
Nice play from Boston Harmison. That's a 5-point.
Adelaide led by 3 at half-time, although one major problem throughout the game were turnovers. They committed 18 to the Hawks' 10.
There was no one there. Thomas has it. Pulls up.
Illawarra hit a purple patch late in the third quarter. 2 3-pointers from Flynn saw the Hawks out by 8.
Yes, he says that's a beauty.
The 36ers got back into the match, trailing by just 2 at the third break.
Hits it a very important shot right on the buzzer. They go to Ninnis.
Neither side could kick away in the third quarter. Adelaide trailed by just 1 with 40 seconds remaining. But it was a Butch Hayes basket 11 seconds from time that sunk Adelaide. The 36ers now need a win over Sydney tonight to secure a playoff state.
The George Main Stakes was the feature event at Randwick this afternoon. Punters made Soho Square hot favourite at 10-9 on as he went for his 3rd win in a row.
Over the rise, 400 metres to go, and in front it's still Prince of Praise. On the outside, March Hare cruises up now to start to give you the challenge. Here comes Soho Square, and Deposition starting to come home quickly, and Slight Chance looking for a way up on the fence. March Hare's dash to the lead with 150 to go. Deposition's the danger. Deposition out after March Hare. March Hare in front. Here comes Deposition. Deposition drumming at March Hare. March Hare.
Yes, March Hare getting the money at 4-1. That's the day in sport. Angela.
Thanks, Mark. And now here's Alan Humphreys with the weather.
Thanks, Angela. Mild and sunny conditions expected to continue for the next 2 or 3 days. The only sign of any rain, just a few very light showers on the coastal fringe, no more than about 10 kilometres inland. Looking at the ultraviolet reading for Sydney, fairly sunny in the morning, but a little bit of cloud coming in the afternoon tended to make us worried about the forecast, but not much of a potential for rain at this stage. The forecast then for Sydney is dry conditions, fairly cloudy, especially in the afternoon though, but no rain, moderate south to southeasterly winds, and a top of 20 for the city, 22 degrees for Liverpool and Richmond. And no rain to report, so the temperatures -3 degrees at Cooma, getting up to 7 or 8 degrees in the middle of the day in most of the snowfields now. The maximum at White Cliffs with 27 degrees. Temperatures tomorrow, an increase in the inland areas to be just 1 or 2 degrees above average. Forecast then for New South Wales, just a few isolated showers just on the coastal fringe north of about Sydney, partly cloudy on the southern coast, light winds inland and continuing dry and sunny. We've still got the flood warnings for the Lachlan downstream of Gemelong, as well as the Murray and Edward River systems, and for the Murrumbidgee downstream of Narrandera. The ACT forecast, fine, mostly sunny tomorrow with light winds, a top of 19 degrees for Canberra. And for the Northern Territory, just a chance of some showers about the western Alice Springs districts and a few showers about the western top end, but essentially dry. 34 degrees for Darwin, 31 for the Alice. And there's a satellite photo, a little bit of cloud moving in from South Australia, not a lot of rain on that, and some cloud hugging the coastal fringe just to the north of Sydney. The satellite, or the synoptic chart, has that high coming across fairly stable conditions, just picking up a little bit of moisture as it moves on to the north coast. And the chart for tomorrow has that continuation of that pattern continuing dry. So for Sydney, a little bit of cloud tomorrow, but continuing dry, and sunny conditions for both Monday and Tuesday. Temperatures round about average. Good night.
Thank you, Alan. And now recapping the day's top stories. The world has responded quickly to Nelson Mandela's request that South Africa be freed from its financial bonds. Australia was among the first to lift its trade sanctions. Boris Yeltsin has raised the stakes in his game of brinkmanship with the rest of Parliament, ordering elite troops to oust the armed guards protecting the Congress deputies. And Essendon has carried off the AFL flag for 1993, defeating Carlton in a one-sided grand final at the MCG. And that's the news to this minute, and I'll be back with an update at 8:25. Good night.
Now it's high towards Kernahan. Couldn't take it. And now he wants to cap it off with a goal.